In this session, leave types have been broken into three categories: short-term, other short-term, and extended/long-term. Let's look at the difference between a short and long-term leave type. Long-term leaves are for 21 days or longer, while short-term leave types are for 20 days or less. There are exceptions to this. For example, sick leave is considered a short-term leave type. However, an employee may be on sick leave for more than 20 consecutive days. Similarly, an extended leave paid request for an easeback is considered a long-term leave. However, the employee may be on an easeback schedule for less than 21 days. Before we review the various leave types, let's look at some general leave information, including leave entitlements. All government NL employees do not receive the same leave types and amounts. For management and non-bargaining/non-management employees, their leave amounts and entitlements are defined by the HR policies, which are contained on the government website and can be found by selecting departments and agencies, Human Resource Secretariat, Human Resource Policies. For employees within the various unions, the leave types and amounts entitled to are determined by their collective agreement. You can contact your HR consultant if you require any clarification or support interpreting collective agreements or HR policies. We will look at all leave types today because this course is for all approvers, those approving leave for employees in bargaining unit positions and for those approving leave for employees in non-unionized positions. When completing a leave request, there are more than 20 leave types to choose from, and for all leave types, the employee will have to further define the request by selecting a reason. We will look at the various leave types and reasons a little later in this module. In the system, employees will see leave types that they are not eligible to receive, and there are no leave hours showing. If an employee were to select a leave type that they were not entitled to use, it is your responsibility to deny the request. In this case, a best practice would be to speak with the employee to discuss the alternative leave types available to use for their request, and then deny the request in the system. The leave type requested determines the number of approval levels required. So, for example, an annual or paid leave request requires only one level of approval, while a request for an additional bereavement leave requires multiple levels of approval, with the final approval resting with the Deputy Minister. The documentation required is also determined by the leave type. For example, a request for certified sick leave requires medical documentation, while an uncertified sick leave request does not. As we discussed earlier, employees' leave eligibility and entitlements differ depending on the employee's position. For example, if an employee is in a unionized position, then their leave eligibility and entitlements are determined by their collective agreement, while leave eligibility and entitlements for an employee in a management position is determined by the HR policies. Now that we have a little more background on leave, let's look at the various common short-term leave types, when to use them, the documentation required, and the required approval levels. Annual leave should be used by bargaining unit employees when requesting vacation time. Managers or non-management/non-bargaining employees who were previously in a union position and have carried annual leave hours forward will also be able to request time off using this leave type. All management and non-management/non-bargaining employees should use the paid leave type when requesting time off for vacation, sickness, family responsibility, or other personal reasons. If an employee is using paid leave for illness, medical documentation may be requested. For example, if an employee is off for 6 weeks to have surgery, the Integrated Disability Manager will contact the employee to discuss their safe return to work, as well as discuss any required medical documentation. Sick leave is for all bargaining unit employees to use when away from work due to illness or medical appointments. Management and non-management/non-bargaining employees can also access their bank's sick leave hours after using 2 consecutive days of paid leave. The period of 2 consecutive days will begin with the first day the employee notifies their supervisor of illness. For annual paid and sick leave requests, only one level of approval is required: the supervisor or manager that the employee reports to directly. When requesting sick leave, the reasons that an employee has to choose from is certified or uncertified. The employee should select certified if they are providing medical documentation for the time requested, while they should choose uncertified when medical documentation is not required. Medical documentation is required after an employee has used more than 3 consecutive days of sick leave. Employees must also provide medical documentation to their approver when their total sick leave time in a fiscal exceeds 6 days. So, for example, if an employee is off for 5 days for a medical procedure in May, they would be required to provide medical documentation. If in December the same employee gets a stomach flu and has to take 2 days off, they would require medical documentation because they have used more than 6 days of sick leave in the fiscal year. They would also be required to provide medical documentation for any additional sick leave hours used for the remainder of the fiscal year. Please note that medical documentation is not required for employees who are using paid leave due to illness. If an employee selects uncertified sick leave, however, medical documentation is required, you should deny the request. You also have the option of pushing back the request and asking the employee to resubmit the request using certified sick leave or selecting a different leave type. You should not approve the certified sick leave request until you have received the required medical documentation. Although sick leave is listed under the short-term leave types, in some circumstances, an employee may use more than 20 days of sick leave. Family responsibility leave is available to bargaining unit employees to request time off to attend to family responsibilities. However, there are certain criteria that has to be met to be eligible for this leave. For example, let's say an employee is planning to bring their sister to a medical appointment. They would be eligible for family leave if their sister lived with them. However, if she lived in another home, they would not be eligible. On the electronic leave form, the employee must select a reason for the family leave request, which are listed on the screen. If the reason is not listed, the employee should select Other and provide the details in the comments section of the form. Prior to approving a family responsibility leave request, you should consult the employee's collective agreement to determine if the reason provided meets the criteria for this leave type. Once again, you can contact your HR consultant if you require any clarification or support interpreting collective agreements. All family leave requests require approval from a management level approver. So, if you are a frontline supervisor in a bargaining unit position, once you approve a family leave request, it is then sent to your manager for their review and approval. If you deny the request, it will not go to the next level approver. The system will email the employee letting them know that their leave request was denied. Although in some circumstances an employee may not be eligible for family responsibility leave, you should consider requests for time off using another leave type. Bereavement leave is available to all staff to request time off for the death of a family member. In the leave request, the employee would identify their relationship using the reason field on the electronic leave request form. All relationships listed are detailed on your screen. Please note that not all possible family member relationships are listed. For times when the relationship is not listed, the employee should select the reason that most closely matches it and record the relationship in the requester comments. An employee can be entitled to 1 or 3 days of bereavement leave, depending on the relationship to the family member. An additional 1 day for the purposes of attending a funeral outside of the island or outside of Labrador for Labrador employees may be granted for employees that have been granted 3 days of bereavement leave. Please refer to the employee's collective agreement and/or the HR bereavement leave policy to determine if they are eligible for bereavement leave, and, if so, how many days they are entitled to receive. Although in some circumstances an employee may not be eligible for this leave, you should consider other leave type requests during this difficult time, as well as consider requests for other leave types beyond the 1 or 3 days the employee is entitled to use. If you require clarification or have any questions, you should contact your HR consultant. If an employee is injured at work, the day of injury leave type is selected for the day the incident occurred. If the employee is unable to return to work the following day or beyond, the injury on duty leave type should be selected. For these days, the employee, if approved, would receive workers' compensation pay. However, for the day the incident occurred, they would receive their regular pay. In the event of an injury at work, the employee should notify their supervisor or manager immediately, as well as complete a Form 6 and send it to Workers' Compensation, which is now called Workplace NL. In SSLA, the employee would use day of injury for time lost on the day the incident occurred, and injury on duty for any other time missed. You must then ensure that a Form 7, which is the employer's form for the workplace incident, is completed and sent to Workplace NL. The Forms 6 and 7 will be reviewed by Workplace NL, and both the employee and employer will be notified if the employee is eligible for workers' compensation benefits. If the employee is not eligible for workers' compensation, the injury on duty leave should be changed to another leave type for the time missed. You may find yourself in the situation where an employee asks you if they can use their sick, annual, or paid leave for the time missed instead of injury on duty. You should not approve these requests unless the employee is not eligible for workers' compensation benefits. If you need help with this process, you should contact HR and speak with your Integrated Disability Manager, or IDM. Although injury on duty is listed under the short-term leave types, in some circumstances an employee may require more than 20 days of leave using this code. Before we move to the next section of the training, let's test our knowledge. Question number 1. An employee on your team jams their finger in a door and leaves work for the remainder of the day to have it x-rayed. What leave types would be appropriate to approve for this request? Would it be appropriate to approve A. Annual, B. Paid, C. Sick, D. Family responsibility, E. Bereavement, F. Day of injury, or G. Injury on duty? The answer is F. Day of injury. When an injury happens while on work duty, the day of injury leave type is used for any time missed on the day the incident occurred. Question number 2. An employee falls at work on Tuesday. However, they do not leave work. On Wednesday morning, the employee sees their doctor, who takes them off work for the remainder of the week, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. What leave type would be appropriate to approve for this request? Would it be appropriate to approve A. Annual, B. Paid, C. Sick, D. Family responsibility, E. Bereavement, F. Day of injury, or G. Injury on duty? The answer is G. Injury on duty. When an injury happens while on work duty, the injury on duty leave type is used for any time missed after the day the incident occurred. Question number 3. An employee on your team has been in a management position for the past 3 years, and they currently have paid, annual, and banked sick leave hours available. They are off sick for 4 days. What leave type or types would be appropriate to approve for this request? Please select all that apply. Would it be appropriate to approve A. Annual, B. Paid, C. Sick, D. Family responsibility, E. Bereavement, F. Day of injury, or G. Injury on duty? The answer is B. Paid, and C. Sick. Management and non-management/non-bargaining employees are required to use 2 consecutive days of their paid leave prior to accessing their sick leave banks. The period of 2 consecutive days will begin with the first day the employee notifies their supervisor of the illness. Question number 4. Over the weekend, a unionized employee twists their ankle while mowing their lawn. After a trip to the hospital, they let you know that they will be off work all week. What leave type or types would be appropriate to approve for this request? would it be appropriate to approve A. Annual, B. Paid, C. Sick, D. Family responsibility, E. Bereavement, F. Day of injury, or G. Injury on duty? The answer is C. Sick. Sick leave is available to unionized employees to use when they are unable to come to work due to illness. Question number 5. A non-unionized employee on your team requests a day off to attend their aunt's funeral, which is an hour out of town. Which of the leave types listed would be appropriate to approve time off for this request? Would it be appropriate to approve A. Annual, B. Paid, C. Sick, D. Family responsibility, E. Bereavement, F. Day of injury, or G. Injury on duty? The answer is B. Paid. Based on the relationship that the family member did not live with the employee, they would not be eligible for bereavement leave. As discussed earlier, although not eligible for bereavement leave, it would be appropriate for you to approve a request for paid leave. Question number 6. A unionized employee on your team requests time off to accompany their child to a hockey tournament in Gander. Which of the leave types listed would be appropriate to approve time off for this request? Would it be appropriate to approve A. Annual, B. Paid, C. Sick, D. Family responsibility, E. Bereavement, F. Day of injury, or G. Injury on duty? The answer is A. Annual. Annual leave is available to unionized employees to use when requesting vacation time. There are other short-term leave types that are used less frequently. Let's review them, when to use them, the documentation required, and the required approval levels.